I want you to visualize a scene. I mean, really try to put yourself there because it is just incredibly tense.
Okay.
You're standing on a muddy riverbank. It's the Peruvian Amazon, so it's hot, it's humid, insects everywhere, the whole deal.
Right.
On your side of this river, you've got a team of conservationists, motorboats, cameras, and a whole lot of anxiety.
And on the other side of the river, looking back at you,
It's just this wall of green.
the jungle.
And then out of that jungle, a group of men emerge. They're uncontacted.
Wow.
They have long hair, they're incredibly muscular, and they're naked except for these ropes tied around their waists. But the scary part isn't any of that.
It's what they're holding.
It's what they're holding. 7-foot-long bamboo arrows knocked on their bows and aimed right at you.
And this isn't like ancient history. This is happening right now. We're talking about the Mashco Piro people, most likely.
Exactly. And in the middle of this standoff, which we were going to get into, there's this moment of communication. These men who have lived in total isolation, they ask the people on the boats one question.
And that question is it's the core of everything.
They ask, how do we tell the bad guys from the good guys?
Which for them isn't some philosophical puzzle.
Yeah.
It's a literal survival question.
So today we're doing a deep dive into the work of Paul Rosalie. And, if that name sounds familiar, you might remember him from about a decade ago.
Yeah.
He was the snake guy.
The guy who tried to get eaten by an anaconda on the Discovery Channel. And we have to talk about that because that stunt and the huge, humiliating failure it turned into is actually the origin story for one of the most effective conservation groups in the world right now, Jungle Keepers.
Okay, I definitely want to get to that whole redemption arc, but first let's set the stakes. Paul isn't just in the Amazon for the adventure. He talks about something called flying rivers.
Right.
And when I first read that, I thought it was, a metaphor.
It sounds poetic, but it's hard science. And it's the reason someone listening in, say, London or Nebraska, should care about what happens to a patch of trees in Peru.
So break it down for us. What is a flying river?
So the Amazon rainforest releases a colossal amount of water vapor through transpiration. We're talking about 20 billion tons of water evaporating into the air every single day.
Wait, 20 billion tons. That's a number I can't even get my head around.
Okay, to put it in perspective, that's more water than the actual Amazon River dumps into the Atlantic Ocean.
Wow.
And this vapor forms a massive invisible river in the sky. It flows south, hits the Andes, and then gets deflected across the continent, watering farmland and influencing weather patterns as far away as the U.S. Midwest.
So cutting down those trees isn't just about losing some animals. You're literally turning off the tap for global agriculture.
You're breaking the pump. That's the mission. It's planetary life support.
Okay, so how does a guy who drops out of high school end up protecting the planet's atmospheric pump?
Yeah.
I mean, his background isn't exactly what you'd expect.
No, not at all. And that's key. Paul dropped out his sophomore year. He just took a GED to, get the system off his back. He said he felt physically suffocated by desks and rules.
I think a lot of people can probably relate to that. The feeling that the real world is happening somewhere else. So he goes to the Amazon, but he finds a guide, right? A mentor.
He finds JJ, an indigenous guide, a local legend. And their dynamic is just fascinating. Paul knew a lot about snakes, the Latin names, the science. But JJ grew up barefoot until he was 13. He didn't learn the jungle from a book. He learned it by living it.
And there's that amazing story about JJ's tracking skills. Paul said they'd walk onto a river beach and he'd see nothing, just sand.
But JJ looks at the same beach and sees an entire story. A crime scene almost.
Yeah.
You could see, a jaguar drank water here, then it walked over there to eat a deer.
Yeah.
But the part that really got me was when JJ pointed up at the vultures circling.
Right.
And he pointed out that the vultures weren't looking at them. They were looking down into the bush.
The
jaguar was still there,
Yeah.
still eating. It's just a level of awareness we've completely lost.
Yeah. It's like Sherlock Holmes, but with, sand and birds.
But the jungle isn't all cool tracking stories. Paul makes it very clear. This is not a Disney movie.
Not at all. He calls it an energy economy. Everything is constantly looking for calories, and, well, you are made of calories.
Which brings us to the ant story.
Yeah.
I honestly had a physical reaction reading this. Can you walk us through that night?
It's pure nightmare fuel. So Paul's asleep in his tent. It's all zipped up. It's 2:0 a.m. And he wakes up because he hears a sound. A little rhythmic snip, snip, snip.
Which is the sound of millions of tiny jaws.
Exactly. He turns on his light, and his tent is just covered, swarming with leafcutter ants. And they're not just on it, they are dismantling it. They're cutting holes in the nylon to carry the pieces away.
And the noise wasn't the only reason he woke up.
No. He woke up because one of the ants was sawing into his ear.
Oh, come on.
It was trying to cut a piece of him off to take back. And because the tent was compromised, everything else was getting in. Spiders, centipedes, you name it.
It's such a violation of that basic sense of safety. It taught him a pretty brutal lesson. But honestly, the ants were probably easier to deal with than the Discovery Channel.
Okay. Yeah. We have to talk about eaten alive. This is the snake in the room, so to speak. Why would a serious conservationist agree to let a giant snake crush him on TV? It just sounds crazy.
It does, but you have to understand the desperation. Paul was watching the Amazon burn. Thousands of acres gone, and nobody was paying attention.
So Discovery comes along with this huge platform.
Well, exactly. They promised him a show about science, conservation, the flying rivers,
Yeah.
all of it. But there was a catch.
The stunt.
The stunt at the end is a Trojan horse strategy. Give them the circus and we'll sneak in the important stuff.
So he puts on this special suit.
A carbon fiber suit, yeah,
Yeah.
designed to withstand the pressure. He lets the anaconda constrict him. He said he could feel his collarbone flexing like a stick about to snap. It was incredibly dangerous.
But the network didn't exactly hold up its end of the deal.
Not even close. They cut almost all the science. They cut the conservation message. They just called it eaten alive. And when he wasn't, actually digested,
The audience felt cheated.
they felt ripped off. PETA hated him. Scientists hated him. The public thought he was a fake. It was a total disaster.
Complete ego death, as he puts it.
But this right here, this is the pivot. If that show had been a minor success, he might have just become another TV personality. But the sheer scale of the failure forced him to abandon that path entirely.
It was a burn the boats moment.
It was. He had nothing left to lose. He had to go back to the jungle and build something real.
Which is Jungle Keepers. But before we get to the solution, we have to talk about the threat that's happening right now. The reason for that standoff on the river.
The first contact situation, the Mashko Piro. For years, they were considered a myth. And now they're emerging.
Let's go back to that shirts versus skins scene. Because what surprised me was how tactical they were.
Oh, incredibly tactical. While the men are on the beach with the arrows, creating distraction.
The women were flanking the camp.
Completely unseen. Raiding the community's farm, taking yucca and sugarcane, while the men held everyone's attention.
And they were coordinating with bird calls.
Yeah, the call of the tinamou bird and capuchin monkeys. This isn't random. It's a sophisticated military operation. Fix the enemy, flank them, and strip their resources.
But then it turned violent. And I think this is where it's hard to sympathize. They killed someone.
They did. Shortly after that first contact, a friend of Paul's team was shot through the lung with an arrow. He died. It was lethal, and it seemed completely unprovoked.
So how do you even process that? You're trying to help these people, and they're killing your friends.
You have to ask why. Why are they coming out of the forest now? And the answer is, they're being boxed in.
By who?
Illegal loggers from one side, gold miners from another, narco-traffickers using the river as a highway. Their world is shrinking every single day. They are terrified.
So when they see a boat on the river, they don't see conservationist or logger, they just see outsider.
Exactly. They see an invader. That's why they ask that question. How do we tell the bad guys from the good guys? They literally can't tell the difference anymore.
Which brings us to the solution, the Jungle Keepers model. Because obviously calling the police out there is not an option.
The police have zero jurisdiction. It's days upriver. It's the Wild West. So Paul and JJ had this radical idea. If you can't arrest the loggers, hire them.
Okay, walk me through that. Because my first thought is, what stops them from taking your money and then just logging on the side?
That's the key question. And the answer is that logging is actually a terrible job. It's dangerous, it's illegal, the pay is awful and sporadic, and you're away from your family for months.
So Jungle Keepers offers them something better.
It offers them stability,
Yeah.
a steady salary to be a ranger. And who knows the forest better than the guys who are just illegally cutting it down? They know all the routes, all the tricks.
You're turning the poachers into the gamekeepers.
It's precisely. And it's working. They've now protected about 300,000 acres. And that land acts as a critical buffer zone for the uncontacted tribes.
I want to circle back to something, to the indigenous knowledge. We talked about their military tactics, but Paul had this medical story that just blew my mind.
The tularemia infection.
Right.
So he gets this nasty bacterial infection in his arm in India. He comes back to the U.S., sees top doctors, he's on heavy-duty antibiotics for 2 months.
And it's not working.
It's getting worse. It's this festering wound. Doctors are talking about surgery. So Paul goes back to the Amazon and just shows it to JJ.
And JJ's reaction is, what?
He basically just shrugs, walks into the forest, finds a specific tree, gets this white sap from it.
Like a dragon's blood tree, maybe.
Something like that. He seals the wound with the sap and then gives Paul a cup of some kind of green leaf juice to drink.
And the result?
One night, Paul woke up the next morning and the infection was just gone. It was healing. After 2 months of the best Western medicine failing, the jungle fixed it in 12 hours.
That is just so humbling. It shows you what we're destroying. It's not just trees, it's a library of chemistry we haven't even begun to read.
And that really gets to the core of Paul's philosophy, his whole perspective on this.
Yeah, he talks about the frigid blackness of space.
Right. His point is, look, we're on a rock floating in a completely hostile vacuum. The biosphere, this thin green and blue layer, is the only thing keeping that cold, dead void out. It's our shield.
It makes our modern anxiety seem so small. The doom scrolling, the societal claustrophobia he talks about.
And his antidote is so simple. He just calls it logging the hours. Just show up. Be relentless. He says the master has failed more times than the beginner has even tried.
It's about being present. In the jungle, if you're not present, you die. In our world, we're almost never present.
And when you are present, you see the resilience. You see the tigers coming back in India, the whales returning to the oceans. Life wants to win. We just have to give it a chance.
So to wrap this all up, we've seen this journey from a high school dropout to the leader of a major conservation movement, all born from a spectacular public failure.
And the most amazing part is how direct the model is. Because they're hiring locals, the costs are incredibly low. Paul says for the price of a coffee, you can protect an acre of rainforest. The money goes right to a ranger's salary, not some administrative black hole.
So you, the listener, can actually help answer that question from the tribe.
How do we tell the bad guys from the good guys?
It's such a haunting question to end on, but I think Paul's story shows that it's a choice. You can choose to be one of the good guys. You just have to be willing to fail, willing to learn, and willing to fight for the wild.
Well said.
That's all for this deep dive. Thanks for listening. Go touch some grass today.
And maybe watch out for the ants.